Way more than if they went to the big graduation. Because they had something specific with the people they actually cared about the most, maybe sans a few people, but
all that matters is who you are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lucky
So all we're doing today is we're just kind of going to go over. We'll let them finish that.
So
Look, it's like a blow up.
that is
Right
awesome.
there. And this is a table, plastic tablecloth.
Girls are creative, guys.
I'd have been like, yo, I don't care about graduation. That's honestly someone like, I almost didn't go to mine. They're like, you want to go? I'm like, dude, I've been here for 5 years. I don't want to sit in a room. Like, it's literally like, at Maryland, it's literally like, you're there, and right before you walk up, there's a person's like, all right, what's your name? And you're like, Thomas Barzil. Thomas Barzil. And the person's like, Thomas Barzil. You walk up, you get a fake one. Person I've never seen before. And you just like, you literally shake it, turn around, you hand it to the next person, you walk off, I'm like, we'll mail you yours there. So I'm like, it's more so just like the pomp and circumstance of going there. I was like, I didn't go to the Maryland's graduation. I went to just the health and human performance graduation. Like the big one at like the basketball arena, I was like, I'm not going to that. I'll go to the health performance one, and I don't remember anything of it other than it was like, it was hot and sweaty, and it was in Coalfield House, and I was next to my buddy, and I was just like, get out of here. And took the pictures, bailed immediately before traffic got too bad, and had the party. I had no desire to actually spend too much time there. Yeah. I still think it's like one of the few things like hung up in like I like hung up initially when I got my house. It was just.
Can I
Go ahead.
throw this out there for a second? Cool. So Tommy and I were talking about just a couple specific topics, and then our conversation just got kind of bigger and bigger and bigger about, it's obviously never ending. So obviously the timeliness of the year, summer athletes coming in the next couple weeks. We just wanted to do like wanted to do a deeper dive into some of these concepts where we can apply, from 10,000 foot conversations into what does it look like in the setting we're in with the time that we work with different athletes, right? So our big two kind of perspectives that we've been talking about are how do you maximize performance in case study number one, where we have, let's say, a younger athlete, younger in experience, right, regardless of age, where we might only have them from mid-June to mid-August. We have APs. We need to teach, we need to assess first, then teach, then actually train with some sort of physiological stimulus to play at as high a level as possible. How do we do all those things? It looks totally different than when we get an athlete that comes in September, and the parents and family and athlete are all in, and they're going to be a long-term client of ours. We know we can do like proper long-term development. We can teach a whole bunch early, knowing we're going to have it late. Maybe they don't have the sports season coming up in 2 months. They have their big season 6 months from now. That journey was totally different. So utilizing certain exercises that have a huge return on investment, but they take a lot of teaching, might be great for that client B. But client A, do we have time to teach how to do cleans? No. But can we do some simple stuff to develop power? What's the importance of timeline on prerequisites for plyometrics? What do we have to do to prepare athletes for footwork and change of direction? Who's cleared the sprint? So like all those things become this really garbled, complex, situational conversations. So I talked to Tommy and I said, hey man, can you just put together an in-service for us so we can look at these things, so we can start the summer with a pretty clear understanding of this is client type A, how do I get immediate return on investment safely, and that looks different, what's client type B, and then let's trickle that down into the specific person. Is that a good way to do it?
So the way I want to do it is I just kind of went over like a general overview of what we're going to look at in their schedule, like in a week. We'll just go like a week by week concept. We'll go what we're looking for in their workouts, like in terms of structure and how we're going to plan it out, how we just want to look at in their strength training workout, just through core at the end. And then we can go back and then we can talk about how it differs from, like I said, case study 1 to case study 2. So like initially what we're looking at here is someone who's trained up already. So like someone that we've had a while that we're not worried about. They know how to move, they know how to do things. So the general like need they're going to need in a week, that we found, and just like what the science will say is, ideally they're sprinting like twice a week. So that's something like just for your own plans when you get someone kids, and obviously when you have all the factors of like, I even have practice put in here, how you structure this and how much time you have with them. If you get them once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, in season, out of season, it's kind of like up to you to figure out where all these things kind of fall in line. Some of these things are going to be on the same day, some days different days, depending on how you kind of format them. But the things that we kind of want to check for an athlete, just in general, all the boxes we need to check, they need to sprint at about max speeds like twice a week. And the big thing there that I always throw in there that I think, myself.
Can I do a quick timeout?
Yeah.
Just for sake of sports, we're talking about power generated needs for
Yes.
sports.
Well, we're talking about like, yeah.
Endurance sport,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we're taking out the conditioning part of it. We're just talking about the like, yeah. So sprinting twice per week, the thing I like to always throw in there for a lot of kids is roughly, always remember, trying to get 3 to 4 seconds of rest per yard run. Because eventually if you start to get a lot of kids, they'll just go and they go and they go. Eventually if you're timing them, they're not running fast anymore, they're just turning it into conditioning. So just making sure for them, if they're doing speed training, legitimate speed training, they have to have rest. Think of it as like max effort weight training, not enough rest, performance goes down, they go down. 1 to 2 lifts per week, the progressive overload for upper and lower body. Like I said, this could be done in the same day like I do a lot here. They need to jump maximally just for overall power production horizontally and vertically. And then obviously getting them in multiple planes of motion, you get skater hops, other stuff there. Same thing, you fill in these how you find necessary depending on the person. Skill-based practice, 1 to 2 days per week at a minimum. Just like if they're playing basketball, need to be shooting the ball, doing their stuff, lacrosse, stick work, all this stuff. Sometimes I get some kids who they love coming here and then they've been like, yeah, it's been 5 weeks. I'm sure you've seen it being the kids hasn't touched their stick in 5 months and they wondered why they're not as fast and do stuff. And then I like to throw like 1 day of rest in. That 1 day of rest can be like a skill-based thing where they just do like an active recovery, working on shooting, passing, catching, shooting a basketball, whatever it is. So the structure you're gonna want in your basic, I'm using this computer, basic workout in terms of the order that we kind of see that works the best is gonna be your warm-up, prep, mobility, activation stuff at the beginning. After that, you're gonna try and get into your extensive plyometrics. And remember, you can always kind of superset this stuff up. We'll go back over how you, like I would with the 2 different people. Your extensive plyometrics, think of like your higher repetition, lower intensity plyos, line stepping, pogo jumps, agility ladder, stuff where you're getting a lot of reps in, and really the main goal is like lower ground contact times, being quicker off the ground, and really just trying to build more tissue capacity, and especially in like lower legs for the most part. Not gonna do too much extensive work with like upper body stuff, since mainly it's just that's all for power anyway.
Yep, I'm just gonna make a chart.
Okay.
Like highlight number box
Yeah.
1, so we can like play with that.
Okay.
In the future.
Yeah.
Find that thing you just said, that whole paragraph. I don't want to speak for everybody, but can you maybe slow that down?
The extensive. Yeah, so just the extensive is gonna be your like higher repetition, lower intensity stuff, pogo jumps, agility ladder, line stepping stuff where you're gonna do a lot more like CNS, getting the CNS up. The intensity is low, not gonna put too much systemic fatigue, building like tendon stiffness, all those different things that you'd want in there. That goes to the beginning because we're gonna use it after. Then you'd get into like anything top speed, so where they're running their fastest. I always just like flying 10s in here, give them a little like build up, work on gradually building up, working and moving as fast as they can. After that, get into the acceleration or loaded acceleration, depending on what you want to do, whether it's starts or you want to do like a resisted sprint, really getting them used to kind of just driving hard there. After that, because they need to be fired up and ready to run, then you get in your agility to change the direction. If you're doing it in a workout, you don't always have to. After that, then we're getting into intensive plyometrics, lower repetition, higher output. So think about like a higher box jump, doing 6 broad jumps, something like that, where you're gonna have longer ground contact times. The explicit goal would be power and force production, not necessarily doing these for tons of reps because we're looking to increase force. Now that they've already done all the stuff where they're really kind of fired everything up, now they're just trying to work on producing as much force. And that kind of put, like strength training, I tend to call it nowadays in my head, expressing force or force production more than strength training, because I think that's what we're really trying to do with most of the athletes, is really trying to produce as much force as we can, more so than them being strong. They're trying to get strong so they can produce force. That's kind of how I started to think of it in my head. That just seems to make more sense. And then this is where you would, when you get into it, so we're looking in the weight room, compound lifts first, I forgot the word, followed by your accessory stuff at the end. Lighter, more dynamic lifts, that can be anywhere from scoop throw, low pull, anything along those lines. You would sit there and be lighter, more dynamic, lunge, anything along those lines. That's where you put it there, followed by your heaviest stuff. Let's say if you're looking at like a back squat, would go later. Because if the back squats go early, they're just gonna put so much systemic fatigue on the body, you can't really get into most of the other stuff. Like if I go do 3 sets of heavy 10 back squats, I'm not gonna run fast because my legs are so drained from the base of the CNS fatigue those things put on. Kind of want to push those to the end. Like I said, this is all for people that are not learning. Learning people will kind of go back, and this order is totally different with them. This is, like I said, people that, returning people that we know that train, they know how to train, regardless of age is what we're doing. And like I said, how you fill those things in, let's say for like an older college guy who's been here forever, maybe his lighter dynamic lift is gonna be like a hang clean or a low pull. Someone who's just starting could be like a scoop throw or like a wall ball, something like that where there's gonna be a lot more room for air, something where it's a lot lighter. Then conditioning at the end if you need to put it in, depending on the person.
Can I stop and ask? I'm going to do this a lot if you don't mind. So we
Yeah, that's
can
fine.
go deeper, but you tell me if we're not getting through a content fast enough.
That's fine.
I'll shut up. Or lighter dynamic lifts. So we mentioned things like a scoop throw, right, which would be like a power producing lighter load exercise.
Like what did you say?
Scoop throw.
Scoop throw, like a medicine ball scoop throw, right?
Yeah.
So we're just training, so like if you looked at it like, yeah, so I look at like movement patterns and I kind of check in. So let's say if we're looking at, I want to do something that's working fast hip extension. You know, if I'm getting someone who's a true newbie, and let's say they know how to hinge, they know how to do this stuff, so we're getting away from like month 1 people there. They're probably going to go to a scoop throw to where if they mess up, their margin for error is so big. If they throw a 6-pound ball, it doesn't go right. Once they know how to move better, probably get them into like kettlebell swings, they know how to do it. And then if they're more advanced and it's appropriate, you get them in like low pulls or faster things like that. So it's kind of like I think of movement patterns and I go, what exercise fits that pattern and how much room for error based on how skilled they are in the weight room. Does that make sense? So someone who's newer, like Ryan was talking about, I have 2 months to get them in shape. We're gonna probably have them emphasize scoop throws and broad jumps more than doing low pulls just because of the complexity of it. Don't want to load them up, put all this extra weight on, have them mess around with it, go with something lighter. But that's where you put it at the beginning. And then you would go like, let's say if I wanted to do a day where we're focusing on hip extension or acceleration or something, it'll be like, all right, let's say one person's gonna be doing scoop throws, broad jumps, another person's gonna be doing like progressive overload on maybe like a single leg broad jump and low pulls, and then they both get into like RDLs at the end or something like that. So just kind of looking at that and how we're building it out. I'll get to this in a second. I was about to get to next. So just looking at like the strength training, force production or expression. I said compound list first, then accessory, kind of same thing. The lighter, more dynamic list followed by the heavier maximal effort list at the end. And at the very end is where I like to put my accessory lifts / hypertrophy. And then kind of coming back, and this kind of goes into where I look at here, is that we want to make sure we're training all ends of a force velocity curve for our athletes because they all have benefits. They're all going to benefit, some more on one end, more on the other. So just the force velocity curve, just basically to simplify it, is we're always, once people like know how to move, they want to move everything with as much intent as possible. All right, and force just equals mass times acceleration. So the lighter it is, the faster it should move. So like if I'm lifting, we'll just use math as a simple thing. If the weight I'm lifting only weighs 2, I can move it at 6, my total force would be 12 newtons, right? And if it's a more moderate weight, it weighs 3, I can move it at 4, it's still 12 newtons, I'm still producing maximal power. And then obviously if it weighs 6, I can only move it at 2, it's still 12, but I'm still working all those different ends of the force velocity curves. But in every single scenario, the person is putting out maximal force. Because if I grab something and it weighs 2 and I move it at 2 miles per hour or whatever, I'm only putting out 4 newtons, so I'm producing a lot less force in that time, which is something you could do for your extensive plyometrics, but basically when you get into the lower back end of the workout, they should be trying to, at that point, they're fired up, they're warmed up, ready to go. We're trying to produce as much force. Now, where are they on that force velocity curve is up to them because all of them have their advantages. So when it's lighter, so like something where it's, you know, I'm holding 2 5-pound dumbbells in my hand and I'm working on like a seated, you know, like a seated squat jump where I'm just sitting down, jumping up there. It's gonna be lighter, so obviously I should be moving as fast as I can, working on our RFP, so it's just our rate of force production, all right? And this is where I kind of put in here where if someone is really strong already, but slow, this is where you want to spend a lot of their time. This is gonna help them working on how much of that strength they can produce. This is someone like me who's always been relatively strong, but moving fast at times can be an issue. This is why, like someone like me, you'd want to put a lot of time there where they're lighter lifts, focusing on taking all the force they can produce and trying to produce as fast as possible. This is where for most of your athletes, like your best athletes are gonna have a high one here. Because if they're really fast, that's great. They wanna be able to move fast on the field, whether it's change direction, load, be able to push off, whatever it is, jump fast, move fast. This is where they wanna live. This is where we wanna get most of our athletes to eventually, all right? I'm gonna skip moderate because I tend to put that at the end. Then heavier is where you increase your overall force production, all right? So this is where you want for anyone who's, can have a good RFP, like they can move really fast, but they just can't move very far. Because like the way I always look at it is, let's say for me and Ryan, I have a really high amount of force, but my RFP is slow. His RFP is twice as high as mine, but I produce twice as much force as him. We'll probably actually move about the same speed. So for Ryan, he'd be benefiting by getting a little bit stronger so he can produce more force, because now if we have the same force output, his RFP is higher, he'll produce that force quicker, he'll move faster. And then for me, I need to learn on producing my force quicker. So it just depends on where you get your athlete. If they're really strong already, get them to work on trying to produce that force quicker. If they're already really quick, but they don't produce their force, you want to get them here, all right? And then easy way to think about it too is your lighter stuff is going to be, think about like that stuff, since you're moving fast, that's going to be like when they're up tall, running fast, because they're trying to produce that force quick. As their force comes off, they got to get off the ground quick. The heavier stuff's going to help them more with acceleration, where they have those longer ground contact times. So they're going to mimic those same things too. So the lighter stuff, where we're focusing on being quick off the ground, producing that force quick, it's great for someone who's, not saying everyone shouldn't train anything, but as someone who's got good acceleration but slow in the top end, they need a lot of that stuff. Someone who's fast but can't accelerate, it's because they don't produce any force. So when they need to have those like longer ground contact times where they're producing force there, there's just not enough force production. That's why you look at like an offensive lineman, their 10-yard splits are just as good as wide receivers. Back end, they suffer. You know what I mean? Just because their RFP isn't high enough, but they're so powerful that we take one step, they're already 6 yards up the field. All right, and then you can always combine something I put down here to take advantage of their post-action potentiation. So let's say if you want to help someone out. So let's say we'll take me for example. So like you may take me and be like, all right, put me on a heavy back squat. We'll just say a back squat where I do 3 reps of a weight I can handle for 6. I'm trying to move it quicker. And then now that like all those motor units are wide awake and I've recruited them all, immediately put me into something lighter to where I can really work on. So all those motor units are awake and ready to move. Now I move into something lighter to where I can take advantage of that. So it's just contrast training, so whichever way. And then, like I said, you can go vice versa the other way. Someone's really good at this, you want to have them fire that up, they're really good, squat jumps, whatever, you can reverse the order. You wouldn't take them to failure, and then you take them into a heavier back squat or trap bar, whatever exercise you deem appropriate, so they can kind of take advantage of that, all their motor units being awake. So that's just where a lot of that play is going to come in depending on who you're talking about. If you have someone who, like I said, they're strong, but slow, but kind of slow, have them do the lighter work. If they're fast, but not very powerful, you want to get them on the heavier stuff. So that just kind of depends on where it is. And then obviously there's always going to be leg work depending on who they are, what sport they play, injury concerns and all that stuff. But that's in general where you kind of want to be. This is where, like I said, we can all take advantage of this, because not a single person doesn't want to be slower or accelerate faster, but how much time and effort you put into each one is going to be dependent on you. Does that make sense? And then just for the core training part down here, I just put at the bottom, basically what we're looking for is flexion, extension, resistance, but make sure that they have good thoracic mobility that goes through flexion, extension, and rotation. They just need to be able to get all those things, whether it's for breathing purposes, shoulder blade moving the right way, just for long-term shoulder, neck health, they have that. But then they want some side bending resistance, and then doing stuff within their core where they're getting a separation of their rib cage from their pelvis. And I like to do that at varying speeds. Sometimes they go slow, and then as they get faster, because when you think about it, in all sports where you rotate, we don't rotate slow. We rotate quicker. So this is where like all the lighter stuff comes into play, is because those tissues need to be able to move faster. Because everyone knows a bodybuilder could do an RDL with 500 pounds. You make them sprint one time, we have to go fast, they pop a hamstring. So a lot of the extensive work, that's why I like to call it like either tissue capacity or like, like either tissue building or like kind of just building some more capacity for those muscles so they can get better. So this is where those faster movements are going to play. All right, so this is, like I said, we're looking at someone who's been trained, the kid who's coming back, we've trained before, we're getting them back into. This would be a pretty good template to use. Obviously, we all know there's 1,000 shades of gray here, so it doesn't have to follow exactly, because you could always go like, hey, we're going to do our extensive plyometrics, and I'm going to superset them with my upper body strength stuff for there. But you wouldn't never really want to go like, all right, cool, we're going to do our heaviest back squats at the beginning, and then think that any of this stuff isn't going to have a significant drop off in performance. right? Because if why I'm lifting, like I always tell kids this, is they go, I got to squat, I got to bench, I got to do this. In reality, unless they're being an Olympic weightlifter or a powerlifter, there's not a single exercise any of these kids have to do. The reason they squat is to get their legs stronger. I always get this across them. The reason we do lunges is to get your legs stronger. The reason we bench is to get your upper body stronger. We're not benching to get better at benching. That's like what a powerlifter body will do. So don't think if a kid comes in, it's like, oh, we have to do heavy squats. I always I'm like, we can, but if they stink at back squats based on mobility, have them on a trap bar, have them do heavy lunges. Their accessory work could be a goblet squat, or it could be if they're really good at back squatting trap bar, their accessory work ends up being their lunges or their split squats, where they're kind of really building in that tissue resilience. That's where I also put like the moderate work at that stuff that's kind of sitting in the middle, that force velocity curve. So it's neither fast nor it's neither heavy. So you're looking at it, so it's like, all right, well, it's not really doing neither. What it's really gonna do is build in a lot of tissue resilience. So let's say we're doing a lot of lunges, it's gonna get my quads, my glutes, hamstrings, whatever else we're looking at, just increasing the work capacity by giving them more work, but we're not necessarily trying to elicit a specific, I don't want to say performance goal, because there is an obvious performance goal into making sure those muscles work capacity has gone up, but it's not going to sit there and say that's going to be the thing that's going to drive home making them an elite athlete. On the flip side of that, we get the younger kids, someone who's a newbie, this is where you spend the majority of your time early on. This is where they need it. I don't want them to go lighter because I don't want them to be going fast yet. So I put them in a moderate speed, moderate weight, where there's going to be actually the most room for air here, because here they're trying to move fast, and if they don't have any control of their body, it's going to look terrible and we don't want to do it. And obviously we want to put them under like something where they're going to do a max effort set of 5 on whatever it is if they don't have the control yet. So like going back, and let's say we're looking at someone who's coming in for, the first time or whatever, this is where kind of seeing what they're good at in the eval looks good at. So let's say they are a good runner, or let's say they are a runner but they've never been in the weight room. You can probably still have them do the sprints if they have good running technique and stuff like that. But maybe when you guys get into the force part of this, we're just living in the moderate, in the middle end of that force velocity curve, especially for someone who have a long period of time. Once they get more advanced, you kind of got to do what I always do is I'm like, all right, cool. So everything I've been saying the last 3 months, we're going to forget about it and start shifting our training into a kind of a different way. Does that make sense? Because early on, the way I always relate to kids is you just got your learner's permit. You got to learn to drive your car before you can drive it fast. Once you learn how to drive the car, then we can learn to drive it fast. Because kids always want to go early, and I just put emphasis on when you develop control. All right, so then with those young kids, they're still going to need the skill-based stuff. They might not need a rest a day because they're probably not going maximal effort in the gym, but there's some things they can probably do. So they can, if they're a young kid and they have decent control, they can probably still jump maximally. You find ways to mitigate the landing forces would be the biggest thing. So I like a box jump, especially where there's no like counter movement, so like squatting down, freezing, making sure as they don't do it, they roll in, jump. They don't have to worry about landing because as they jump, they would land on a box. You just find a box that's an appropriate height for them, because that's going to be the biggest limiting factor in someone early isn't their ability to accelerate, it's actually their ability to decelerate. So that's the thing I'm going to mitigate the most. So if you give them runs, don't necessarily have them decelerate, change directions, but they can generally tend to go pretty quickly. All right, and then when you get down here, probably going to spend a lot more time in the warm-up prep mobility. We're probably not doing too much intensive plyometrics. Like I said, we're probably just going to be living in the moderate area, honestly looking more like a bodybuilding style workout in terms of rep schemes, your 3x10s, 3x12s and stuff like that. Agility, change of direction, that's going to be very dependent on the person. Acceleration, loaded acceleration, it wouldn't be a bad thing to do. You could actually load them up a good amount if they have good control, have them go slow. Think about like a slow prowler push would be a good thing for these kids with feedback and stuff like that. Wouldn't obviously, if I have an advanced kid, I don't want them doing slow prowler pushes. Whatever weight they have on there, they're trying to move it as fast as they can. Now, obviously the weight I put on there will determine how fast I go, which I always tell them. I go, the weight on this prowler is going to determine how fast we move. If I want them to be really working the high in the force velocity curve, I just stack a bunch of 45s on. If I want them going fast, no 45s, you got to get down and back as fast as you can and work on your leg drive. So this is kind of where, we have to do the leg work and depending on what's appropriate for each kid. And then, it's always, this is to me, no offense to everyone, this is the least important thing to worry about, especially with someone early on. Like that can be done outside of here. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Or if anything, for a lot of kids, I think they should just get it from playing their sports more often. Because it's like, a lot of people, they love conditioning. The thing I always get across is like, the Man U test, the 100s, there's a million track kids I could know who could pass that test in 5 seconds. You put them inside, let's say we're looking at lacrosse, you put them inside of a 12 and make them do change of direction, their legs are gonna be melted in 5 minutes. So people always think this is just runs, but remember there's all these other things that need to weigh into and things that need to get done. So, and then I always just like going back up just for my own thing is making sure the skill-based stuff and the sprints and the max speed are separate days. People tend to think they're the same or they should be done together. I think they should always be done. They can be done the same workout, but separate. Because if you think about, let's say like a lot of people you see, like let's say football players, they want to run routes. Oh, I'll get my speed in my route running. How often do you hit top speeds outside running like a post route? You're not hitting them, so you're not getting them. So let's say if kids are like, oh, I did my sprints, I worked on dodging. I'm like, did you dodge from the 50-yard line or did you dodge from the 8, take 3 steps and shoot? That's not speed training. If anything, it's probably closer to acceleration or rotation. Just making sure that's clear to the kids of what we need to do, that we need to sprint. When we're sprinting, we need short sprints, work on acceleration, longer sprints, work on that moderate stuff, and then you could do even longer sprints like hundreds, but that's gonna have a long recovery period. Just making sure, because a lot of people will turn those into conditioning. I went out, did my speed work, my sprints, I did 10 100s on the minute, and I go, yeah, it's conditioning after the second one. Just making that sure that it's clear to kids, because a lot of kids, they wonder why they're not getting faster. The big thing they always miss out is on that part up there. It'd be the same thing too if I said, hey, what's 90% of your bench press? Gave you 30 seconds, how many times could you do it before performance 4 reps, and then you're probably done. You gave me 4 minutes, could probably do 30 reps of that kind of stuff.
At some point they need to combo then though. Not
Yeah. Well, and that's why I said like in a workout what they could do, and I've had kids do it where I get them warmed up. Let's say if they go out to a field and I'll write up their workouts, have them do this stuff, pogo jumps, A skips, B skips, C skips, whatever, butt kicks, any of that stuff happens here. We can get some top speed, let's say flying 20. So we're gonna jog up to the 30. Once we get to 30, we'll sprint from 30 to 50. Walk all the way back as you break. Do that a couple times. Get a couple starts where they're running 20 yards. All right. And then in this agility change of direction stuff is where they can go, let's say we're looking at lacrosse, dodging, shooting, all that stuff. Because now that is agility, but they've already touched on this. They've already done their speed work, and now they can apply speed work down here. Does that make sense? Because that's where the things they go, all right, cool, I did my dodge, took 3 steps and shot, and they go, why am I not getting faster? I'm like, well, you never actually got out and sprinted and opened up. So it can be combined, but it shouldn't be necessarily like combined in the same thing, in the exact same moment. Oh yeah, they can absolutely do it on their own. Yeah, it's just a matter of most kids, from what I've seen over the years, they always end up turning it into conditioning. That's always the biggest thing. They always turn it, like I said, it's not a bad thing if that's what the thing they need to work on, but I just like to always get it clear to them, like, that you need to rest enough. Because if you don't rest, like I said, it turns into conditioning. We're no longer training speed. Why am I not getting faster? Why am I not getting faster? It's because they just...
There's a difference between training speed and training skills.
Yes.
And then combo.
Yes, and I think they should combine them, but it shouldn't be that all of this comes during that, because it should be separate. Like I said, like, hey, we need to get out and work on our speed. All right, cool, now let's apply it in our like sports session or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Because it's like if I want to be fast up and down the basketball court, you know, if I just do jab, step, step back, shoot for an hour, I never actually worked on my speed. Now there may be times I need to run down fast in transition, hit that same move under control and do it. So then that's when you combine them. But I think they should be separated a little bit and then combined together. Because at a certain point too, where it's like, if they're like, all right, cool, I did whatever. I did a dodge and then ran 10 yards. It's not bad, but then you sit there and you go, it wasn't long enough for speed, and then you didn't get the effect of the dodge of like doing it. And then even then, if it's a straight line sprint, you don't run in a straight line. It'd be more of a curvilinear sprint anyway, so.
Can we also maybe discuss or just think about how we view this stuff too, right?
Okay, so to me, the biggest difference is change of direction is closed environment. Cone, run to that cone and back. That's a change of direction. That's great. Agility is open, up into Q. So same drill where now I'm telling Ryan, go here, going open. Where they're reacting to a person or a thing or an audible cue, a visual cue, something like that. Change of direction is pre-planned. So think of like mirror drill, and then here we're thinking like pro agility, 5-10-5. All right, you're talking about where that applied and how that's applicable?
Well, bigger conversation, and I'm not looking like for a very specific answer. I just want us to all critically think about this one, right? So let's just say we have somebody new. They could be an advanced athlete, experienced, whatever, older, doesn't matter. The way that I think about it, and I love everybody's opinion, is I think of when we begin this concept, because what do we hear all the time? my kid needs to do faster, they need to be quicker, and they need to be bigger.
Yeah.
And they need to be in shape, and they start in 2 weeks. Like that. Okay. Give me a second. Yeah, can they come now and stay overnight? So I think of our immediate impact on this one is learning a skill set, which is really this, to have the potential to have this improve. Right? So we're teaching angles, we're teaching where to put feet, we're teaching body positions. We're not actually changing anything physiologically.
No.
We're giving them a toolbox. Then as training continues, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this in order to decelerate, accelerate, and do all those things, then the physiological piece actually comes into play, and then adding reaction and doing all those things build, right? So it's like some big kind of pyramid where the biggest foundational piece that we can impact early, correct me if I'm wrong, is teaching, right? Which then they can go apply hopefully the next week and not get their hips turned immediately on things. They're going to look faster on the field, but they're actually no faster.
No.
They're just using better strategies, right? And then as we have more time with them in a bigger program, all the things that Tommy's been diving into that make us better athletes are all about the ability to do that now on the field in real life setting. Right?
Well, because the way the gym is really, people always say, oh, really all I'm trying to do and all we're really trying to do in a very simplified way is just increase their capacity for work, whether it's make them produce a little bit more power, get off the ground a little bit quicker, have better angles. We're not really revamping things, we're just increasing their capacity for work, which then eventually increases these things. So, because if I can, by squatting or whatever, lunges, doesn't matter, say that lower body exercise, gets my legs stronger, that gets me better accelerating. And then I just go and do my acceleration training where I'm fine tuning that using the skills I've gained from the weight room. All right, working on whatever, let's say repeat contact tuck jumps where we're really focusing on being quick off the ground, getting those legs up. All right, that's gonna help us in the top speed stuff, all right? That's all we're looking to do here. So when we get in the gym, whether what it is just then, I'm always just kind of circling back to what I did. I always sit there, when I plan out my workouts, I plan out what I want to do here, and then I kind of figure the rest of the stuff out based on whatever concept. Like, hey, we're just working on accelerating today. So if we're just working on accelerating, I'm probably not going to spend too much time here, not too much time here, probably not that much time here, and then a lot more time here since that's the most applicable thing to that skill that I'm looking to acquire in that day. And then vice versa, if I'm looking for top speed, I mean, we'll still get some of this, all right, but we're looking for a lot more extensive plyometrics, a little bit more intensive. We're going to focus more on the lighter, more dynamic lifts. So you don't have to hit every single thing. You can have a day where my general thing when I have these girls like come in Tuesday, Thursdays, I have them do one day where the entire emphasis is on like getting top speed, a little bit of acceleration, mainly agility, change of direction, and then just getting stronger. Then I have another day where it's all spent on extensive, top speed stuff, acceleration, loaded acceleration, and then some intensive plyometrics, and then we just go right into the heavier stuff at the end. So you don't have to check every single box. That's a big day. If you hit all those things in a day, it's a lot of stuff to get through, and you're probably just touching on each thing, which is okay if you have someone maybe who's, whatever, just looking to pop in once a week or something like that. You may have to touch on all those things, especially if they're not doing anything themselves. But if you have someone in 3 days a week, you can just, as long as we're hitting these things in the week and kind of checking these boxes, that kind of goes up to you. You know what I mean? And like saying anything depending on the athlete. So let's say if they said they love going out to the field and doing their sprints, all right, you don't need to focus too much on it here. Maybe you just get a little bit of the acceleration stuff or whatever. Or you just focus more down on plyometrics, intensive stuff, and here knowing that they're going to go actually out to the field and do it themselves. You have someone who's very like intrinsically motivated, they'll go out and do it. If they're not, and they'll like, oh, you get like a teenage boy who's going to go to the gym, how many times say, oh, how you feeling? Like, good, I hit chest last night at 11, and you're like, why? We have this conversation like, oh, I did like 10 sets of 10. You're like, why? Like, you don't need to do that. You have stick legs and you did bench and curls for an hour. So it's like, with those ones, we have to spend probably all of their time. Like, I have a lot of guys, I'm sure you've had it, where most of the training is actually here and very little here. Yeah, and they'll go to their high school gym class and do that. So this is where I like to sit down with my kids, and I always ask them, what are they doing in a week? When do they have their club practice, high school practice, whatever else they're doing in a week? And then we're trying to see, are they meeting these things? So let's say if I have a kid and he plays basketball, they do a ton of jump training at basketball, okay, we probably don't need to do too much of it here if they're already doing it. And then we can focus more on this stuff here and then just getting them a little bit stronger, getting them conditioned, whatever it is. Does that all make sense? And then when you have your like newbie people, like I said, you're probably going to spend, I wouldn't even, honestly, if they're new, don't even look at the top part because that part doesn't matter at all. We would spend most of our time getting them, honestly, probably down here, just getting them strongly. You get a new kid, the number one thing I get them to want to do is learn how to control their body and then get a little bit of strength. The strength will help them get there, and then once they get into that, learn the applicable skills, kind of going back in, sprinkle these things back in until they can handle like kind of a full day of training.
Question,
yeah.
Concept. So let's talk about that situation, right? So we get a lot of our new kids in here that are like Bambi on ice, right? Or we get kids that maybe have grown a lot and they have big frames, like my guy Emmett, Rob Hoffman's son, right? He's like 5'10", and I don't know what he weighs, but it's significant. You know, he's a big boy. He's got size 13 feet, but he's young. Right? So you have a guy that's playing a sport that's close to you based upon accelerating, decelerating, changing direction. Right? Yeah. So two things with this concept to just think about. I want to use him as an example because he's probably a little bit of an outlier, but we get this a lot of times and girls that will grow, 8 inches in 3 months. So when we have somebody that's lighter, prepubescent, they may look phenomenal at some of these things. They're changing direction, right? They're minimal ground contact time and top speed work. They're moving well on plyos, and then they add a bunch of weight or add a bunch of length. And they can't get out of their own way. Something to be aware of, and I'm saying this for myself as much as all of us, is that the other day, Emmett just did the best set of lunges he ever did with no weight. And it was the first day that I set the bar low enough for him to do so. I've been training him for a year, right? And it's been body awareness, building strength bilaterally, like doing all this stuff. And he was able for the first time to step, own the descent, and like come up and back. And there was no artificial motion to get back up. And I just had the light bulb go off like, wow, so look at that. Like that's a thing where it's such a basic lift, but this kid's geometry and physics have changed so much in a year, that's harder for him now than it was last year.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the concepts is make sure our entry, our barrier of entry is low enough to be successful in it. And
so
a lot of times you wouldn't think that in a scenario like that. We really got to think physics.
The way I always do that and the way I like to think that for me, just with all the kids that's found to be successful is I never tell them they're doing a regression. I start them at the starting point, let them progress out of it. Let's say we're looking at a side plank. I never start them on their feet and make them have to go to their knees. I start them on their knees, then they can go to their feet. Because if you set them in an easy position that they can show you it's easy, and then they can progress from there versus you put them in a position, because then let's say if it's a side plank, I hate side planks, putting my feet, if I go to my knees, I feel like I'm now failing in a way. So I always just found with kids, just start them in the easiest position, or I always relate back to their first sport, whatever it is. Like if I'm playing, let's say I'm coming to you, Bean, and you're my new kid right here. And if I said, all right, cool, I've never played lacrosse before. What's the first thing you're gonna teach me to do? I've never touched a stick board, never seen this. What's the first 3 things you're gonna teach me to do?
Hold the stick, how to hold the stick, how to pick up the ground ball.
That's where you are in your training. That I tell every kid, that's where you are. You're not at the catch a ball, do some crazy question. We're not there yet. We're there once we get that, because if I put the kid in a hard drill, you put me in a hard drill and I can't do any of those things, I can't even do the drill. I feel like I'm failing. And then it becomes this like, oh man, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this kid getting it? And it's all on me having put him in a position where they were never gonna be, not never, but very hard for them to be successful. Let them kind of progress. And I just always start, we'll start here. I'd like to get here, but we'll see how we do, kind of just going in the day kind of thing versus, yeah, versus from a psychology perspective, like if you bring me into an exercise, I'm like, hey, we're gonna do this. All right, so you can't do that. We need to go back to man, I just failed. I just failed day one. Like, it just sucks for me. I just stink versus, hey, let's start with this. Hey, that was pretty easy. Let's try this next thing. And you go, all right, cool. We got to where I was hoping we'd get to, but I put him in a position to where if we only get to step 2 instead of step 4, I still feel like I made it to step 2 instead of, man, I went from step 4 down to step 2. Hopefully I get back to step 4 sometime.
In that setting early, you have time and an opportunity to learn from them And it's not just about the physical.
Yeah.
Are they going to tolerate discomfort for perfection? Like, are they going to sit there and
Yeah.
be perfect, or are they going to be like agitated
Yeah.
and want to get out of it?
And then, yeah,
Right?
and I think a lot of this goes with like same thing with exercise selection with what you pick. So same thing too. Like let's say if we're looking at whatever a squat, we'll just use squat progression. It's like, all right, cool. You start them at the bilateral squat, goblet squat, and then whatever back squat, front squat, whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter. But you want to start them there, and then I like to put kids when they're newbies in the position where whatever exercise can get the training goal I want, like even if it is, let's say something on that force velocity curve. Someone who has a lot of skill, I want to give them harder exercise. Harder is relative. Someone who's new, I want to give them an exercise that has the greatest room for error. So let's say if they were to mess up on a scoop throw, it's not a big deal. Like there's no load coming down.
20.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
It's a 4.
yeah, so it's like, all right, cool. Let's go there and then mess up versus if I put them in a low pull scenario, they got this big barbell, they're messing around with it. So the same thing too with your exercise selection. I always pick exercise to where when they mess up, it's not like I'm like panicked about it. I'm like, all right, cool, just next time do this or whatever. So that's the same thing too when you go to those things. But I'm someone personally who likes to get people, we're back down, whatever, this page. Down here, I don't want to say sooner rather than later, but as soon as I can. Yep. Like as soon as you can, because the sooner we get them there, the sooner they're getting the benefits, but I'm making sure I pick exercises that have that massive margin for error. I'm not giving them something where it's like the same things I'd give like a college kid or something. I'm giving them same thing, but I'm trying to maybe elicit a training effect, same movement pattern, but in an easier way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. I love that. The other thing to all this, which tell me if you're going to go into this, tell me to shut up. But a lot of this is, we're getting into like this is a level 2 presentation, level 3.
Yeah, this is what I want to take versus, because we go with the beginning stage, yeah. Beginning stage, it looks a million different ways. Let's say you get a dude who's a college kid, but he's had a knee injury, but he's been lifting weights for 5 years versus a newbie who's 11 and never touched a weight.
But I just want to throw this as a thing for us to think about, right? To get here and to do these things, there's a level of tissue preparation needed to reduce risk of injury and to be effective.
This is where this has its there. So this is why I like to call it as tissue resiliency. Because that's where you're going to need it. Because it's like if all I do is the heavy stuff, because most of this stuff here and here is very low repetition. Like your lighter stuff, like if I'm doing, a weighted squat, I'm not doing 20, I'm doing 7, 8. Heavier stuff, if it's genuinely heavy, it's probably under 5, 6 reps. So where they need to get a lot of that resiliency, they get a lot of that increased work is going to be in that moderate stuff. So that's where you get them a lot of the moderate work, whatever it is, whether it's, hey, we want to do a lot of calf raises, single left calf raises, so then we can get them into doing pogo jumps. We want to get them into doing just goblet squats, so then we can have them do heavier squats or heavier broad jumps, or we'll learn how to do smaller, like more deceleration training so that they can do a max effort broad jump without landing in a weird compromised position. So this is where like early on, they're gonna live here. Now the weights may actually be on the lighter side, but they're still only moving them there. So like I kind of don't really talk too much about that force velocity curve because I don't want them sitting there going like, oh, I'm only producing a moderate amount of force. As they get deeper on, that's where you go, everything they do should be maximal amount of force they're producing now, which is the mass or the acceleration's higher depending on the person, but they need to train all things. So it's like, all right.
Now with our newbies or our younger kids, a lot of times we hear they're not ready to lift weights, right? Or we don't want resistance high, right? A strategy that we've been playing with, or you tell me your thoughts on this. Like if you've got it could be down to like a Kian at home. I do this with them. We'll do goblet squats with an isometric component to it. So we'll do like a 3-second negative, hold the bottom for 3, and come up hard.
Yeah.
And do like 8 of those. But that isometric time, he's processing, he's learning, he's stabilizing, he's feeling it. It's not a load where we're falling and trying to get back up 8 times.
Yeah. Oh, you don't want to do that early on.
Yeah. It's still like hard effort for him.
Yeah, and that's where it's so like that's why I say like hard's a relative thing.
Yeah.
Like certain exercises, like I don't find Bulgarian split squats hard. Most people hate them. I hate doing lunges. I never want to do lunges. I hate them with a burning passion, but I'll do split squats every single day of the week. So hard's a relative word, but yeah, and how you make it hard, I think if you have someone who's young, that's a great strategy. Someone who gets older, and
You gotta get out of that slower deceleration.
yeah, They want to get out of those slow negatives and those slow concentrics. They want that, because if you look at that stretch shortening cycle when you play, especially when you play sports, it's very quick. That's a very quick, I can never pronounce the word, amortization phase, where it's like quickly this, that measure of how long you can go from eccentric to concentric, and how quickly they can turn that over. And the quicker they turn it over, the better. Like your higher end athletes will always have a high RFP, and that's what we're looking to get out of them, is how quickly they can go from stretch to a contraction. So that's what we're trying to get there early on. Younger ages, don't emphasize that at all. Just
With a newer athlete that's transitioning into that concept. So let's say you got like a 15-year-old, been training a few months, like body's kind of tuned up with awareness of movement. Would you go to a lighter load to teach that concept where it's the first time? Like, okay, we've been doing like very controlled negatives on things. Today what we're gonna do is take something light, so I know you can do this, and we're gonna drop down in a second or less and get up quickly. Here.
Well, I would,
Show proficiency
for me,
there.
I'd actually have them go here first. I'd actually have them get strong, because once I start getting into that, we're gonna be stressing, all right, we're producing force quick. I wanna make sure at first that they can produce force first and foremost. So it's kind of like where we wanna get to is kind of the last place we get to, is the last thing I kind of wanna introduce, because once I get into that, I don't then want them taking that strategy and then introducing this and then kind of flipping it and they go here, because then this stuff they've already know how to do. They've kind of also learned to control, so it's like whatever, it's a squat. They've learned to control that, and like I said, heavyweight is relative. All right, cool, now they can produce a lot of power. Let's say it's a heavier back squat trap bar. So they go, hey, that same quick little power production. This is where I actually like when there's people doing the contrast training. I'll have them do something heavy that they can control. And then, cool, same exact movement pattern, right into this. I love doing the scoop throw broad jump combination. A kettlebell swing broad jump combination. Because if you think about it, if they're here and I just have them go, like, all right, cool. Let's say they know how to do RDLs. All right, we can go there, teach them that lighter thing, and then as soon as they're done, same kind of fast movement right afterwards. So they can kind of take advantage. They get two things, that maybe one thing they know how to do. They know how to do RDLs. Those people early on, I might have done like the last 2 weeks, hey, we're doing RDLs. This week we're introducing a scoop throw, similar to an RDL, obviously angles are different, but kind of build in that way. So I kind of have them do something heavy and strong first. They show that they know how to do it and actually load and then produce power. Then we kind of get into the lighter work first. Because I just want to make sure that once you're sitting there, they're working this, they move fast. A lot of sometimes the kids now find this boring because they don't value it yet. Versus they get strong fast, they can get strong really fast. They see the value, oh, I'm getting strong, I'm powerful. All right, now let's learn how to use it. Versus like, cool, I gave you a smart car, hey, drive it faster. It's like, or if we can make it faster by making the car faster first, then driving it fast after. That's kind of how I look at it, because I always just look at like kind of like a car thing. I'm like, hey, you want to make a car faster? Yeah. Obviously, you always have to weigh the weight of the car, but in general, how fast the car is. Because that's the thing that I think a lot of, especially, you could probably speak to this too with girls, is they don't want to be here. They don't want to spend time here. They hate this here. But I emphasize them and I go, cool, fine. Then the only way, if you want to make a car go faster, if you don't want to make the horsepower, what's the only way to make the car go faster? You got to make it smaller. You got to make the car lighter. So I go, that's fine. I've said that to them, and I go, yeah, many of them just go, all right, I'll just do the heavy squats then. I don't actually want to stop eating junk food. I want to keep going to Wawa 3 times a week. I'm like, all right, well, cool, then this needs to get high. I sit there and I go, and I'm like, look, I'm an average athlete who's not that much bigger than them, but the fact that I'm significantly stronger, when we go get off a line, within one step, they're already behind me. And I go, that has everything to do with my just ability to produce a ton of ground reaction forces, which comes from the fact that I've spent most of my life down here, not enough up there. You know what I mean? A lot of girls, most people in general, when they go to the gym, where are they going to spend most of their time? In the moderate activity.
And
They don't there.
What I see, heavier is producing more than lighter. Like, I don't know if it's coming out right.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. No. And the thing is, like, I agree with you, because if this isn't being done, this isn't going to be great. That's not going to change much. We need this. This is the same thing I would say. So like, we want to work.
Other things besides it's producing like more endurance.
Oh yeah. The heavy strength training is the thing that I think just gets, I don't want to say undervalued, but stigmatized in the sense that it's going to make me heavy and slow. Just show them a picture of Saquon Barkley. That dude heavy and slow? Saquon Barkley's gigantic. Dude squats like 600 pounds. And it's like, And this kind of goes to the same thing too. Whenever I saw a video and it was just like it's one of those things where he goes and it's like, he was box squatting 600 pounds and just like literally like touch, drive up, touch. I mean, Saquon's a freak of nature.
The rate in which he moves that.
Well, and just the CNS fatigue he has, and then, and Saquon's a freak in the weight room. But like the thing, and this kind of goes to where the one time I'm gonna like, not one time, but this is where it's a good, argument is like, how long do we get here, right? If you spend so much time and you delay getting here because we want everything to always be perfect, which I think should be a goal, but understanding it'll never be perfect is the way. Same thing too with like, people say, I need to be symmetrical from side to side. I'm like, great goal to have, as long as you understand you'll never be symmetrical. You'll never be symmetrical. You're like, I was literally joking with like my baby, with Mike's baby, and he's like, she was grabbing the Legos and kept throwing them. I'm like, oh, she's right-handed, it's gonna be good. Mike's like, oh, and I want her to be left-handed. I'm like, dude, her life would be so much easier if she's right-handed. Like life is just easier and right, because everything's designed to be right-handed. So it's like, you're always gonna pick up stuff, we're never gonna be symmetrical. But the thing is, the guy said, and he goes, I don't care if you don't do enough of like this heavy stuff and you really work on how powerful you are and this too. The moment you're someone who's just like, hey, I like to be here because I feel comfortable here, the moment you run into a Saquon Barkley, you're done. They're gonna be too powerful, they're gonna be too fast, too strong, and too everything. Now, if they're not a great mover, obviously the injury risk is there. But so this is the thing where you have to weigh sometimes when you have someone, you go, at a certain point, we do have to, with an athlete, you have to get them there. And you just go, look, we got to start doing this stuff. Because the moment you run into the kid who has been doing it, regardless of whether their technique's good or not, if they've been out, even with bad technique, they're not going to be as good as they would. But if they're sprinting every day, lifting it like twice a week, I mean, just by the sheer workload, they're going to get powerful and strong. Maybe not as good as they should have been, obviously, but they're going to beat someone who goes, I need everything at a moderate intensity. So you'll be good at moving moderately. You're not going to be fast. You're not going to be powerful. And the moment you run into the kid who's, let's say he got there quick and he just dialed in on the details, he does a lot of this and a lot of that, they're going to just run right through you, run right over you. Yeah, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, if all I want to do is, let's just say, and I'm not saying we do anything bad. It's always a disclaimer. But like, it's like, I just feel really comfortable with just the barbell doing this. And I go, yeah, you see the kid next to you with 245s on each side? The moment you got to pick up a ground ball side to side, you're getting tossed. And it's like, you have to get there.
So is it kind of the conversation of, I think of it this way, like doing things that are maybe right on the edge of you being 100% perfect, you're creating a lot of force, or you're able to produce a lot of force, maybe wasting some due to some inefficiency in the field, versus not producing a lot of force. All of it gets to the field, but the margin isn't big enough to catch this person.
Well, and that's where I think you have to weigh from person to person. Like someone.
It depends on the sport, right?
Yeah.
Like if
Oh,
it's
100%.
golf, that's a totally different conversation than offensive defensive line.
Yeah. And
Kind of goalies, and that's just totally different.
Oh, yeah.
They need lighter, quicker, everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they just want to be explosive. Boom, yeah. Just got to be quick with their arms and all that. Yeah. And I mean, and that's where like it kind of, you have to just go with use the person.
A tad bit of force out of their legs.
Yeah.
But everything in their upper body just needs to be quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where it's just like when the exercise selection, you go like, all right, cool with upper body, maybe we find some upper body plyometrics, a lot of med ball throws, stuff where it's on this end of the force velocity curve, whatever, let's say they're on their back on the ground, you're on top of them with a med ball, they got to catch, quick, turn it over, more than having them do a 1 RM bench press where it's that. So, you know, and then let's say if you have someone who's an offensive lineman, they need both. They need to be like, I'm just going to do light throws. And you go, dude, if you're playing an offensive line and you don't get underneath the barbell, yeah, you should be playing receiver then or something like that. So this is where like always kind of the play comes from person to person and then just seeing where they are, you know, and like I said, like I actually like to pick it based on what they're good at. And the thing that I started using to avoid the thing you said, which is seeing that drop off, is a lot of times when I'm here, I want them always, instead of using, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, I have them do like reps in reserve. Reps in reserve. And I go, when you're done, because like if I said a set of 10, where are you going to probably struggle the most? 9 and 10. 9 and 10, right? So I only want you to do 8.
Yeah.
Do 8 as hard as you can. And then you go like 9 would have been shaky, 10 would have been rough. We never got there.
Yeah.
We focus on that. And then when we really need to build the hypertrophy and other stuff, that's where we go here where it's kind of in that range where it's like, all right, we're doing a set of 20 lunges with whatever weight. It's heavy, it's hard, I can control it, and it's making my legs tired. Versus on the like back squats, like I do with a lot of the girls, I'm like, all right, cool. Like let's say I use Gabby. She got up to doing 185 for a set of 5. The last month, she didn't squat anything over 135. But it was all sitting there, and I'm like, all right, I want bar speed, and we're just doing 5. So something that she can control, and just going like that. So she's working on her RFP. She's still moving some weight. And I'm only having her doing 5 instead of getting to where she gets tired. And right when I'm like, now if you really feel like you're starting to drop off and lose it, shut it down at 4. I'd like to see 2 reps in reserve a lot of times with the kids. Because then when they would start to feel like fatigue setting in, elbows flaring, it's cool, they're already done. And they're still got the power, which is what they're looking for.